California's Gold is produced in association with KCET Los Angeles and is seen statewide on California Public Television. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and we have just pulled off the General's Highway, and we're looking out here. We're at kind of a little overlook here. We're looking out at Kings Canyon. We're east of Fresno. Those are the Sierra. And this whole area this is where the Sequoia National Forest, the Sequoia National Park, Kings Canyon National Park, they're all located right here. This place contains some of the most beautiful and magnificent trees in our state, including, of course, the gigantic old sequoia trees, which are the largest trees in the world. But as beautiful as these trees are, we are not here in search of big old trees. We're here in search of something else in the forest, something man-made. And even though they're made by man, they're still very much a part of our state's natural history. So if you're curious as to what we're looking for and if we're going to find them, you're invited to come on along with us in the forest as we search together for California's gold. Getting to our destination took us through some beautiful big trees. At first, we were on the main paved highway, but we quickly left the highway for a scenic but bumpy ride on a little traveled dirt road. We were heading deep into the backcountry. Okay, here we are. We have met up with Kathy Ball from the U.S. Forest Service, and Kathy and I are clinging to the side of this big old rock right here, looking out over Kings Canyon. One false move, and we'll be in Kings Canyon, won't we, Kathy?
That's absolutely right.
All right, tell us exactly what we're looking at, because this is one of the most beautiful views I have ever seen in California.
It is spectacular, and what we're looking at is the Kings Canyon drainage. We're looking north to the Middle Fork of the Kings River and over towards the Sierra National Forest, and we're actually standing in Sequoia National Forest.
Boy, this is just spectacular. We're how high up are we? Because I'm beginning to breathe a little heavy already.
We're at about 8,000 feet here.
The air is clean and crisp and pure. You can hear the birds singing.
That's beautiful.
Off in the distance. All's right with the world.
That's right.
Now, this is exciting for us. For Kathy, this is nothing. This is just another day at the office, isn't it?
I wouldn't say that. I still think the views here are awesome, even though we are at my office.
All right, we are at Kathy's office and her home, right?
My home, that's correct.
And I guarantee you, you have one of the most beautiful and unique offices and homes anywhere in California. Let's take a look at it right here. This is it. This is where Kathy works and lives on a daily basis. Tell us what we're looking at, Kathy.
We are looking at Buck Rock Fire Lookout. It's part of the Huell Lake District in Sequoia National Forest. And as you said, this is my home and my office during the fire season.
Because you are
I am a fire lookout.
A fire lookout. And before we're going to hike up to the top of there and kind of visit your place, get a home tour. Tell us a little bit about the history of fire lookouts, of fire towers in California, because there's a rich history there.
There is a rich history. Fire lookouts in California actually started in 1876 with the Union Pacific Railroad. They put up fire lookouts to look for train fires. But in 1905, our nation's forest reserves were organized into the U.S. Forest Service, and the Forest Service needed some way of protecting their valuable timber resources and started an extensive network of fire lookouts throughout the country.
And of course, many of them would be here in California because of our magnificent forest.
Absolutely. The heyday of the fire lookout started in the 30s. The Civilian Conservation Corps under Franklin Roosevelt started building a lot of fire lookouts, and from the 30s through the 50s, was considered the lookout era, and at its height in California, there were over 600 lookouts standing and being staffed.
600
Yes.
fire lookouts all up and down the state.
That's correct, and approximately 8,000 throughout the United States.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the history of not just the fire towers, but the men and women who staffed them. That's an important history too.
I think that's a very important history. It takes a special person, I have found out, to staff a fire lookout.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you have to have a certain personality, I think, and they actually have a qualification form that they have you fill out. And one of the things that you need to be able to do is live in isolated areas for long periods of time. And not everybody can do that.
Because we are out here now, there's no one out here.
No,
It's
there's not.
dead quiet out here. And you're just kind of perched up there day in and day out, looking out across this magnificent vista for, I guess, smoke and fires and all that, but there's not a lot of human interaction.
At most lookouts, there is not a lot of human interaction. Buck Rock is a little bit different because it is fairly accessible to people, so we do get visitors. But I've been at a fire lookout, Delilah Lookout, where I saw 9 people in an entire fire season.
Really?
So it can be a really an experience of solitude.
All right, a couple of more questions. I'm thinking of, my mind is
Yeah.
racing. The fire season goes from...
Usually fire season here in California is June through October.
Okay, and then the other question, I've seen some of the pictures of the old lookouts. Lookouts come in all shapes and sizes and architectural designs, don't they?
That's correct. The earliest lookouts were very crude. Some were just platforms on rocks. Some were actually crow's nests in the tops of trees, which we have pictures of.
They were just sitting up in literally up in top of a tree, just barely hanging on up there.
That's right. They were a lot braver than I am.
How would they get up there?
They built ladders to the top of the trees.
Just
to
like
get up
rope
there.
ladders?
Rope ladders sometimes, or sometimes they actually nailed in steps into the tree trunks.
Whoa.
Which is how Buck Rock actually was first accessed. There was a tree that was delimbed and leaning against the rock, and they just nailed in steps, and that's how they climbed to the top of the rock.
And the other architectural forms are very interesting.
They are. What's interesting about Buck Rock is that it was the first of the live-in lookouts. Before this type of lookout, there were just observation-only posts, so the fire lookout couldn't live in them, and there were many, many styles. Most of the earlier ones were very small little 7-by-7 foot rooms. They started designing live-in lookouts in 1914, and Buck Rock happens to be the prototype for live-in lookouts to come.
Wow. So these old lookout towers are spotted still throughout California. How many are still going today?
There's just over 100 that are being staffed now in California, quite the decline from 600. In Sequoia National Forest and Park, there used to be 40 staffed, and now there's only 8.
Really?
Yeah, and only 2 of those are being staffed full-time.
Wow.
So they really have declined. The decline came in the 60s and the 70s.
Why?
Well, that's a good question. Government agency managers say that there are several reasons, air quality being one of them, using more technical resources like using aircraft or satellites or infrared. However, satellite technology really is still too expensive and we don't use it, and aircraft don't fly the forest 24 hours a day like a lookout looks out over the forest. So I'm really not sure the answer to that question.
Boy, when you get up closer to it, this is really a big, sheer kind of a cliff we're looking at here.
It sure is. It's huge.
How did they get that? You call it a cab, right? The little
Yes.
house is called a cab. I've been reading up on this.
That's correct. We call them a cab.
How did they get that up there? How did they ever build it?
From what I understand, they used hoist and cables to haul the materials up, and the materials came from probably Pinehurst by mule.
Back in?
Back in 1923. Huell, do you see those pipes going up the rock there?
Yeah.
Originally, that's where a tree was leaning against the rock, and there were steps nailed into it, and that was the access to get to the top of the lookout. And then beyond there was just a rope, and people used to haul themselves up on the rope to get to the very top where the cab now sits.
Now, that old tree was replaced by stairs back in...
Back in the 1920s, it was replaced actually just by a series of ladders.
And those ladders were replaced by these stairs.
That's correct. This stairway came in 1942 after the lookout was built.
Wait a minute. You mean in the early days there wasn't even really a lookout up there? They would just go up there and sit?
That's correct. It was an observation post, and there was a small platform on top of the rock, and the fire watcher would come on horseback and climb up the ladder and just make observations on top of the rock.
Now this is something right here. And when you look out here, you're literally climbing up into space.
It feels that way.
You're just hanging out. Is this safe?
It better be.
No, I mean, really, we're just...
Well, this is the original stairway. Nothing has changed since 1942 on the stairway except for the steps that you're stepping on.
Boy, I've never experienced anything like this. Oh my gosh. This, oh.
What do you think?
This is great. What a view. How many steps?
Well, there's 172 total.
But who's counting?
We must be counting because I can tell you at this platform we have only 47 left to go.
Oh, look, we're here.
Yes, we are.
Ah. Boy, I tell you what, just getting here.
It's the workout for your day.
But it just keeps getting better and better and better as we get to the top. We're on the top of Buck Rock. And you get a 360 up here, don't you,
Yes, you
Kathy?
sure do.
Now, just walking around here, oh gosh. And it's just a little kind of a
very small catwalk, we call this.
And this is the original wood?
This is not the original
Okay,
wood,
good.
I can assure you. The building, though, is the original, but not the catwalk.
And it just goes all the way around. You get a 360 up here.
That's correct.
I don't even know where to start. I've never felt like I was so high up before in my
We are
life.
on the top of the world, it feels like,
We
doesn't it?
literally are.
Yeah.
And so far, we've just seen part of the view because we can go all the way around here and see the rest of it.
That's right.
Now, what are these little things?
These are awnings, and they ended up putting these up to help reduce the reflection of glare on the windows. Originally, there were no awnings at the lookout.
And this has to be original wood
This is all
here.
original wood and glass.
And when you're not up here, what do? Put these awnings down?
Actually, the awnings stay up like this throughout the fire season, and they only come down in the wintertime to protect it from the winter storms.
Yeah.
So we have the awnings up no matter how high the winds are blowing or how much thunderstorm activity we have.
Boy, I could just sit right here. Look what we're looking at out here. Wait, but you have a little bird feeder up here. What kind of birds come up here?
We have hummingbirds that come up here. I discovered them when I brought a bouquet of flowers up a few years ago, and the hummingbirds were trying to get into my flowers, so I put up a feeder.
Boy, these are high-flying hummingbirds.
They sure are.
All right, enough of the outside. Now we're going to go inside and get a home tour because the inside of the fire tower is where a lot of the action is and where you spend a lot of your time.
That is correct, yes.
We're inside the fire tower, or the cab, as you call it, and we have a welcoming committee here. I didn't know anybody else was going to be up here.
Yes, we do, and I'd like for you to meet John Exline, who is our district ranger here on the Huell Lake District.
Nice to meet you. You came up to supervise and make sure we didn't get in any trouble,
That's
didn't you?
correct.
All right, now I think I may know who this lady is because we've seen pictures of you. Introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm Lee Daughters. I was a lookout here in 1944.
That's
Yeah,
what I
yes,
thought. We've seen pictures of you
Have you?
actually
Have you?
standing by this very
Yes,
piece of equipment
That's
right here.
That's right.
Now, what is this?
That's the firefinder, the Alliday they call it.
Now, how does this work?
You spot a smoke, and to convey the location of the smoke, you sight through here, line up with the crosshairs. You get an azimuth reading here that you telephone or radio into the headquarters, and they thereby match up the maps and discern where the fire is.
Now, this hasn't changed in 55 years.
No, in 57 years it does not change. Yeah. No, this is probably the only piece of original equipment here.
Yeah, the
there was
little room
nothing.
is kind of still, it's the same dimensions.
Yes,
Just kind of modernize things a little bit.
At that time, we had a wood stove, and I did have a little butane, 3-burner butane stove, and one telephone, little crank telephone. The wires ran, they were just ground wires that ran from tree to tree down to Pinehurst, where the headquarters of the Hume Lake District was at that time.
How did you get into this? This is not a job that most people find.
I think they were just very hard up for manpower in 1944.
During the war.
Actually, I came up those steps on June 6, 1944. That turned out to be D-Day. I didn't know what was going on in the world.
Well, you wouldn't know anything was going on in the world out here.
And I didn't know much for the next 6 months. I didn't leave here for 6 months.
You're kidding.
No.
You lived in this fire tower for 6 months.
Until the 31st of October.
How'd you get your food?
Well, they would bring up about once a month. They'd bring food up. I would telephone down to Pinehurst, and there'd be somebody coming up.
Didn't you get kind of stir crazy up here?
No, not with this view.
Yeah.
Not with this view. Every day is different up here. The weather is different. You become a weather freak when you're living up here. You enjoy the weather and see what's building up or what's coming down.
Now, you still come up here.
Yes.
With your binoculars. Look, she comes prepared.
I've been watching this morning. We've got hunters in the woods this weekend. So there's quite a few people in the woods this weekend, and they are to be observed. Different areas of the woods. There's bound to be some down here in the Boulder Creek area. In the older days, there were not the roads that led down there. They had to hike in there.
So you were really isolated.
Really, there were not as many roads, just the one you came in.
And Kathy, what have you learned from hanging out with Lee?
I've learned a lot, mostly courage. And I'm really inspired by her adventurous spirit, to be honest with you. And it's interesting to me that for many years we were actually neighbors and we had no idea. We each worked at Buck Rock until several years later we met when we wanted to do something about saving the lookouts. And then I discovered that Lee was the first female fire lookout here, and that really inspired me.
So you were the first female fire lookout.
The U.S. Forest Service was a bastion of male chauvinism.
That was pointed at you,
right?
But you didn't have anything to do with that, did you?
He did not.
Yeah.
But up until the war years, there were several other women working in lookouts at that time, but not much other than that.
Can we take a tour of your home?
Sure.
Give us there's not going to be much, but this is you got maps everywhere.
Maps are the most important tool probably of a fire lookout's trade aside from good eyesight and binoculars. So yes,
you got
we
maps
have
here,
on all of our
you got a map here.
That's right.
You've got a little table and a little book.
We take a daily log every day. We record activities in this part of the forest, and any time we have conversations on the radio, we record that also.
Another map up here, and here is, now Lee, she's got an electric stove over here.
Yes, she has an electric stove. She has running water. She has a refrigerator.
And you know what? But I'll tell you what you still don't have. We passed it on the way up here. And that is a bathroom up here.
That's correct. So we do have an outhouse down below.
You still have to go all the way down the steps to the bathroom.
You get a head start.
So that's really...
It's part of the original equipment.
Whoa. I guess there's no way you could put a bathroom up here,
no, it's like a fishbowl up here. So
wow.
There's not much privacy.
Now, is this the original stove?
No, that is not. It was not much larger than that. I had 4 plates on it too.
So what is this for? Heat?
It is for heat, and I have a stash of wood right outside my lookout here.
Okay,
It
so
gets
you
cold up here at night.
you got an electric stove, a heat stove, you've got a
With a
refrigerator,
refrigerator, that's right.
you got a sink, coffee maker. You got a radio up here.
Yes, I do.
So you
No
do.
TV, but I do hear what's going on in the outside
Boy,
world.
I bet you could get great television reception up here.
Probably so, but I choose not to have a TV.
Well, it would kind of interrupt with the natural moment.
I think so, yes.
All right, and we've got the bed over here, which has to be $1 million view from your bed. I mean, look at what you're looking at out here. This is
Oh, it's wonderful to wake up in the mornings here. The sunrise comes right up over the Great Western Divide, and my very first view of the morning is to see the sun coming up those high peaks.
Now you put your own little personal touch here. You have plants and dried flowers and magazines and books and, you know, anything that a home would have to have.
Well, this is my home 5 days a week, so I like to have my personal belongings with me.
Now I have found a piece of furniture here that I have never seen anything like this before, but this makes perfect sense to you.
It certainly does, and you will find something similar to this in every fire lookout you visit. And this is my lightning protection stool.
Wait a minute. Your lightning protection stool.
That's right. Whenever there is lightning in the area, what I do to help protect myself from the effects of lightning is to sit on this stool. And I've done that several times. There are glass insulators at the bottom, and it helps prevent something called side flashing of lightning that may enter the lookout during thunderstorms. And you know it's serious if I'm starting to sit on this stool.
Who came up with something like this?
I have no idea. Lee, do you have any idea?
Is this something that's been around?
It was way before my time. Yes, it was here.
So
They
you
were
had a
here.
fire
Oh, yes.
protection stool, lightning
Yes, we did.
protection stool.
I had that and a little footstool, which we're going to have to look into, Kathy.
What do you mean?
One footstool with insulators on it, which makes it a little more comfortable to sit on.
So you sit
Ah.
like this and you put your feet on that.
So what do you do? Just sit in here
What I
and
do, if lightning's starting to approach the lookout tower, I turn off everything electric. I get off the radios and I close the door because lightning can follow air currents. And I sit right down on this stool and I start recording lightning strikes. And to do that, I try to sit as close to my firefinder as I can because I use my firefinder to plot where the lightning is so that I can later go back and look at those areas for smoke.
this whole picture I'm getting is so surreal of you here. Sit down on this stool.
It's
So
actually quite exciting.
you're
And,
sitting
I-
up here in a lightning storm on your lightning stool,
Yes.
plotting out in the pitch black dark where the lightning is striking.
That's correct.
Wind is blowing, rain is pelting down,
That's right.
and you're on top of Buck Rock doing your job.
And my hair starts to rise like this, and
You're kidding.
No, I'm not, and on my arms as well. I have felt the metal on my bracelet tingle on my arm from the charge of the electricity, and I often am clued into thunderstorm activity because I can hear the awnings, which are not grounded, outside buzzing with the static electricity buildup.
Really?
So it's very, very, very thrilling to be here during a lightning
So
storm.
you are right on you're right in,
On the highest point, so
it's coming right
so
here.
It often comes right here.
And what about wind?
The winds can be very, very gusty here, and really, to me, it's a little more scary than actually going through a lightning storm when the winds are high.
Does the place move?
The floor lifts, so I can feel this lifting. The wind gets underneath the floor, and the floorboards start to lift, and it feels like you're going to be blown off the rock. But that has never happened.
Boy, I tell you what, for those looking for high adventure,
This is,
high-end adventure, this is the place to come.
it is the place to come. But it is the one time we don't have visitors visiting us. We try to dissuade them from coming up here during a thunderstorm.
Don't step back.
What'd you say?
Don't step back.
Yeah, I hope this railing is okay. I'm working on faith right here. We have come back outside the lookout itself, the cab itself. And Kathy, you and others like you have really gotten very interested in preserving these wonderful old fire lookouts.
That's right, Huell. When I discovered that 7,000 lookouts have been neglected or destroyed
around the
country, and many in California as well, and after having lived here, I decided that something needed to be done about it. And I discovered that there was a national organization called the Forest Fire Lookout Association, which is made up of a group of enthusiasts who are going around saving fire lookouts. And so I joined that organization and decided to do one of our own here in this area, and it's called the Buck Rock Foundation. And the purpose of our foundation is to preserve fire lookouts.
And why do you think it's important to save these wonderful old structures?
Well, because they're wonderful old structures. They all have a different personality. There's several different styles. Many of them are historically significant. They're older than 50 years old. Buck Rock's a great example. There's only one of this type, three of these types of lookouts that are remaining in the world today. And I think they're a great symbol of our conservation heritage.
They are definitely a part of our history.
They are a part of our history.
Well, no question about that. You've sold us. This has been an absolutely wonderful experience. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee, for coming up and sharing your wonderful experiences from the 40s with us today. And, of course, she's still here working as a volunteer.
Yes, she is.
And, Kathy, thank you again so much for bringing us up here and sharing this amazing view with all of us. There's no doubt about it. Fire lookouts and fire lookout towers are all not only part of our California history and our natural heritage, but they are all fine examples of California's gold. Goodbye, everybody. We're going to end our program by just looking out at this wonderful, spectacular view of our California Sierra Mountains and these beautiful, beautiful old trees.
One of the reasons why I do this job is because I feel like I'm making a difference. We are the eyes and the ears of the forest, and we're here to protect people's lives and property, the trees, wildlife, from devastating fires. So I think it's a very important job.
Because the forest can't protect itself.
I guess not.
It needs help.
Yeah, it needs help. It needs help from catastrophic wildfires, yes.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and I sure hope you enjoyed this adventure. If you'd like to see it again or share it with your family or friends, or perhaps donate a copy to your local school or library, it's available on video cassette and on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.